Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to our session titled Inspire Leadership in Grassroots Community Engagement. My name is Maya Tussing, and I am a commissioner on the Commission on the Status of Women for San Mateo County. And I'm also a partner with Fairlight Advisors, and we're a financial consultancy for nonprofits. I'm excited to moderate this panel where we'll hear the very personal stories of three brave women who have led change in their communities through thick and thin. We've asked each of them to speak from their hearts about what has helped them become leaders and what they've learned from their experiences. I will very briefly introduce each woman before her story, but you can read their full bios on the smcwomenlead.org site. We'll have a Q&A session after their stories. I ask that you limit the Q&A section to questions and your cheerleading to the chat area so that we can effectively moderate at the end. So let's begin with our first speaker. Our first story comes from Manufou Liaiga-Anoa'i. Manufou serves as the first Samoan Pacific Islander to serve as Board of Trustees and past president of the Jefferson Elementary School District, and as commissioner and past vice president since 2011 on the San Mateo County Commission on the Status of Women. We'll stop sharing here. Take it away. Oh. We can't hear you, Fo.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, Maya, for the introduction. Happy Aloha Friday. As she mentioned, my name is Manufou Liaiga-Anoa'i, and I am definitely deeply humbled and honored to join my fellow panelists who do just incredible and amazing work throughout the community. And I also want to extend congratulations to Belinda, who was inducted into our Hall of Fame this past week. I have been tasked to speak about resilience and share a few stories of how I've been able to bounce back from things that have tugged away at my heart. Resilience is defined as the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. My life has been filled with peaks and valleys. I, like all of you, am not immune to the life experiences that can tear away at your spirit and leaving you feeling defeated. 2020 has had me stuck in deep valleys, but it has carried me through because of the gift of hope. As a young girl, I quickly learned I had to guard my emotions and became fully aware of the safety I found in my silence. Coming from a blended family of 22 siblings, the lines can get blurred and cause a lot of confusion and even heartache. This struggle to gain a sense of belonging and acceptance continues for me today, especially as I try to find my place in arenas where no one, absolutely no one, looks like me. And because of my cultural perspectives, which are ingrained from my Samoan upbringing, my foundation is many times misunderstood. As my lived experiences began to shape my thinking, it also gave way for me discovering my very own voice. Advocacy became my platform in my home, in my family, and in my community. My parents did not have to tell me the importance of hard work and integrity because it was seen every day as they pulled themselves up to work long days and hours to ensure that we were fed and our needs were met. Their example of servant leadership guided me to public service. And while I have received recognition to be the first Samoan Pacific Islander in some of the roles that I've been able to secure, it has come with the weight of expectations unknown to my family, and to my community, along with a level of loneliness from feeling tokenized and even minimized. Instead of wallowing in those moments of insecurity, feelings of doubt, and sometimes even defeat, I embraced my beliefs in the importance of relationships and honoring the space shared with my colleagues in these community and political arenas. I have had many failures. As we heard earlier this week from the amazing Amy Allison, our failures can actually be viewed as defining moments leading to a successful pathway. In 2015, a seat on the Jefferson Elementary School District Governing Board became vacant due to the untimely death of Joseph Waters. Just a few weeks prior to his passing, he and I were sharing conversations of my concerns about my Harmony's needs not being met around her learning challenges. As applications began to fill for the vacancy that was now available, I never knew at that moment I was being called to step up. You see, because I had so many distractions swirling around me. My son Hamilton was recovering from a torn ACL and was finding his way as a freshman at UC Berkeley. My other son, Reno, had to be in Hollywood the very night the school board debate was happening and would be eliminated if I did not accompany him because he was a minor. My youngest, Harmony, was disconnected from being at school, and so we pulled her out and said we would homeschool her until we found a better solution. And to top things off, I was in the middle of a career transition. I was drowning. But then I got the call. Fo, it's your time. That's what he said. That call came from Supervisor David Canepa and the crowds of the community that showed up to support me at City Hall as I debated with 6 others to secure this seat was such a heart win for me. As I rushed off the panel to SFO, my cell phone was going crazy as I was going through TSA. Trying to get Reno back to the show, all I could read was, "You won, you got it, we love you, we are so proud." Through all that I was experiencing in my personal life, this was a moment of resilience, weathering through those storms. Fast forward, I am running for re-election to keep the very seat that I speak of. But this year, on January 5th, in the wee hours of the morning, my heart was broken as my faith was tested once again as we lost my Anthony just shy of his 34th birthday. I immediately fell apart and am still trying to regain a sense of rhythm. And to add to my brokenness, COVID-19 has ravaged through my family, my community, and we continue to suffer great loss during these past few months. And this very weekend, we will be saying farewell to one of my beloved aunts. Despite all of my anguish and grief, as a public official, being a board trustee, a commissioner, the urgency to be present was definitely felt. I honestly was not sure if I could find the strength. But as we also heard from another incredible panel yesterday, allyship is key to great leadership. In the past few weeks, I have had 5 women of color reach out to me, and even one who did not contact me directly. But when I heard about her campaign, I said to myself, what can I do? These were a few of the exchanges that took place. Should I do it? Can I do it? Fo, can you help me? Those were heart moments that I will hold close to my heart forever, because it takes courage to run for office, to make it to those meetings with all of the other demands that are put on us as women, and to stand strong when the process is politicized and seeks to compromise your very core beliefs. The need to rise up and push forward became very clear to me. God spoke to me the night before my candidacy papers were due. He said, "Foe, finish the race." He did not say I was going to win, but he did say, "Finish the race." And with that said, we are all running a race in life, seeking outcomes that we hope to be fulfilling. I would like to encourage you all to stay in your race. Take time to reflect, rest, and reset, and give yourself permission to just be. We need to do better as women to be unapologetic about saying no, not now, wait. And then also be ready to say, yes, I am here, I am seen. Let us lend ourselves to causes that need us, even when not asked. I know my representation has allowed for progress that I seek as a person of color from a marginalized, invisible community. And no, I am not from Somalia. I am from Samoa. Sitting in these positions assists with facilitating the courageous, difficult conversations that need to happen because they are about us. Women who lead every day, but are still not seen, validated, or appreciated. In the words of Maya Angelou, I can be changed by what happens, but I refuse to be reduced by it. Thank you for this honor to share a little bit about me on this beautiful Friday morning. Be well and God bless.
Brava, brava, Fo. Thank you so much for that honest story. It was very touching. We will be able to ask Fo questions at the end, but I want to introduce our next storyteller. Our next story comes from Dr. Belinda Hernandez-Arriaga. Belinda is an assistant professor at the University of San Francisco, and she is the founder, chief executive director at ALAS, a Latino cultural arts, education, mental health, and social justice program dedicated to working with rural youth and families living on the coast side. Welcome, Belinda.
Thank you so much. Welcome everyone. And my heart right now just goes out to you, Bo. I mean, what a beautiful message of inspiration for us all. And what a reminder to keep going in moments that, we sometimes don't know how, but you have an army of angels that surround you and love you. And we see the excellence and beauty and strength. And we also see the mama that you are representing your son forward in everything. And so thank you. You bring such a beautiful message because there's always so many stories we can tell and things that we want to say and trying to figure out how we put everything into words, of those voices we want to represent. But it's really powerful because you remind me today, this morning I was watching the march in Washington, and I was listening to Bridget Floyd, George Floyd's sister, and to his brother that said, I don't know how I'm making it, but it's because of all of you that we're here today. And one message in particular, Bridget Floyd said, and it's very similar to what you're saying, Fo, is that we have to be the change. And sometimes it's hard to get up and be that change when we're going through our own struggles, when we've gone through our own losses, our own grief, our own challenges, our own exhaustion. Sometimes it's hard to be that change. And yet here we are, all three of us, right, together collectively saying, how do we push forward and how do we show up and how do we be present for our communities, even during crisis? So, when the group asked what was my theme, I'm always talking about how do we make the invisible visible, and how do we give voice to the voiceless? How do we make the hidden, those voices that are hidden shine like who they are, and how do we do that? And so it's really interesting because not too long ago, there was this article that the Mercury News wrote, and I gave that same theme, like this is what our work is at ALA's, my work is at USF, my work is in the county, like, to make those voices that are hidden heard, and to really amplify their leadership, who they are, where they're at, the needs, and to be a witness too. And I do that in my work, both locally and at the border, with many children and families that are seeking asylum, that are hidden, that are suffering right now. There's so many people suffering right now. And so my message is always about how do we get their voices heard? And then the news reporter, when this article came out, his headline said no longer invisible. And it just it was like, yes, he got what I was saying, but also that's the point. That's the mission. The Black Lives Matter movement right now, that it's no longer invisible, that people cannot be living in silence or afraid to live in silence. That you're on the school board, bringing voices to all those that you represent that have for years been historically unrepresented and silence. Rita, for those that you're working with in Pescadero that live in rural areas, in remote areas, that you're bringing their voices to the forefront. For the many families that we serve, to make this happen is the mission. And so a lot of times people say, how do you do it? How do we continue? Because it has been a 2020. I remember New Year's Eve 2020, I was with my 3 daughters, my family, my husband, my mom, and we thought this is going to be a bomb year, right? This 2020. And little did we know, like, all of the challenges that have come our way. But I do have to say that one of the things that has been beautiful about crisis and what we've gone through is it literally has peeled away layers of seeing the community, all of you that are out there today, present. I mean, we've gotten calls from strangers, from people that are not even in our community, from beyond, saying, hey, we care about that farm worker family. We care about that child. We care about, that they need masks, that they need food. How are you doing? How's the community doing? It's just powerful that you see. And it doesn't even have to be that we're always giving or getting things, but the messages of love, the message of unity, resistance, resilience, care, advocacy has been present. And I said that in my interview for the award interview that I received, was that we live in the best county of San Mateo, and I can see it every day. And so yesterday, every day I'm waking up to think about just, how am I going to initiate the day with so many different things that we're doing. And this week, as Rita could tell you, it's been a little bit trying and hard, right? With the fires and just the long hours, and on top of COVID, and then on top of a lot of crisis at the borders, deaths at the border, things that we've been hearing. My students at USF, caring for them, and everybody, my own family, my own daughters. And I woke up and I got a message around 8 o'clock yesterday, and it said, Belinda, Mimi, who is a kindergartner, showed up in her classroom, and she said, I want to put Ala's and Dr. Belinda in prayer today, randomly for her kindergarten class. And when I got that text, it just really resonated how beautiful, like, people are all in this together, even as small as a 5-year-old, that's saying, I care. And I think that is the message of no longer invisible, that everybody's voices are heard. And for me, one of my biggest platforms is children. trauma and children, Latino children and families, mental health. So really amplifying the message that we're not going to stop. We're here, we're strong. Folk, we will get up and rise up every day with angels that watch over us, like your son, with prayers, with community members like all of you. And we will continue to make the invisible visible, fighting for everyone at all levels to be heard, to be seen, to be witnessed. And we can't stop, we can't get exhausted. And it's normal to get, tired. But let's remember that we are community. We are here for one another. And there are angels praying for all of you. So today we are visible. Thank you.
Thank you, Belinda. Thank you for amplifying the voices of the invisible, and you do it with such optimism and such grace. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to turn to our last speaker, our last storyteller. You might notice that she's sitting in a hotel room. Rita Mancera has served as the executive director of Puente over the last 20 years and has focused on youth development and social programs in Mexico and the United States. Please, Rita, go ahead.
Thank you, Maya. And I'm really bad with time. So how about when I see, just give me a sign when you need me to stop. It's a pleasure to be here with you and with the other members of the panel. I think before I tell you more about our crisis and some of the awesome things that I feel are happening, I do want to share a little bit about me, because I think that is part of the goal, right? To understand where we're coming from. And I think you will understand more what I'm saying today if you knew that most of who I am is really my mother. I grew up in Mexico. I was born actually in Mexico City, moved to Baja California Sur with my family to an empty lot with a little tree, stay out in there under a tree for a week until they built a wooden shack. And my mother has always been the inspiration. There's no excuses for her. We need to be the best we can be. She had a third grade education and she set the path for myself and my brother and my sister. She ended up doing adult education to finish her, what we call secundaria in Mexico, so like her middle school. And if she could do it, I could do it. Later on, I ended up getting married with my husband, who's from Michigan, this white old guy. And my mother joined English classes in Mexico to communicate with him. And she completed 12 levels, and she can speak English and my husband cannot speak Spanish. And if she could, that's been always the theme in my household. Look at the example my mom set for us. And I speak a lot about my mom because, my father was out of our life very early on. And so that is, when I immigrated to the United States, that's what I brought with me. I brought those examples. And I think I want to be super transparent that I'm a work in progress. I have all those values. I have all those lessons from my family growing up there. And then I also come to realize that a lot of those things have been messages of oppression, right? Like, of course, we didn't speak up because we were oppressed. Of course, we were okay with whatever the school was deciding because we were oppressed. And so I feel a lot of strengths that I got from my family. And then I have to start, as someone said, right, peeling off all these knowledge, emotions, experiences to be who I am today. And I'm sure, later on I'll be a different person, but we women continue just changing depending on our experiences. So, that is who I am now. The part that I wanted to focus on today is how this crisis is yet again another test. If you come to the evacuation center, if you see my team at Puente, we are a lot of women in those groups and women that are coordinating together to make the best we can. Are we gonna make mistakes? Absolutely. I'm super open about making mistakes. I love when people share stories of failures because that make us more, My son is here and he says that makes me feel better about myself. No, I think it's very good experiences to share because we are humans. But in this crisis, on top of all the other crises that we have had, and on top of these work that we have been doing in our community for many years now to elevate the voices of those that are not here, it combined and it developed into a partnership with other organizations. Of course, county is present, but I am super grateful to both ALAs and also to a person that I think has a lot of good thoughts to share from Costa, I hope, who did Guerrero. And about 80% of my team got in evacuation order as well. And regardless of that, they're still working at the evacuation center, working from hotel rooms, but we knew we were not gonna have the capacity that we had when we are all available. So I reached out to these two organizations and they have been instrumental for the response that had been provided out of the evacuation center in Half Moon Bay. So it is yet another example of people working together. And I think emergencies like these make me reflect a lot and every single day about the approach that at least I'm trying to use in my organization, which is most and for all, our people, our Latino people are very strong, are very smart, are very resilient, are very sufficient. The work that we do is not charity work. The work that we do is empowering people. And I think, you know, I know there's a lot of people in this call and not everybody is going to be in the nonprofit sector, but we have to continue changing the nonprofit sector to understand that we are not the saviors and the heroes. We are partners with our community members, that we make assumptions sometimes that they are not going to make best choices and that we need to move away from that perspective. And so these crises show that a lot of the people, you know, before we set up the evacuation center with the county, they had already moved with friends or with family members, and many of them have taken care of their own needs. And the most inspirational part for me was to see some of the own evacuees, not only my team, because I know I can count with them, but community members who texted us to volunteer on the evacuation center because they had time and they wanted to give back to the community. I think if we have gotten to the level, and I can probably bet the same will happen if the emergency had been here in Half Moon Bay, there's people that are just willing to give back. And I think that has taken a lot of time for them to realize they have something to give. It doesn't matter that some of them didn't speak English, because we actually had them there without speaking English, or that their English was broken. I still have an accent. I don't think I'll ever lose it. And little by little, I'm proud of my accent. Not always, but you know, I used to think that I needed to sound better. And at some point, you just realize that as long as you do the most important work, these other things are just who we are, and we need to put the focus on where it has to be. So seeing these evacuees helping at the same time that many, probably dozens of other volunteers that I haven't seen personally, is a very good example of how community comes together to take care, you know, of their own challenges, their own situations, and that we are partners with them. I think the tone that I have set at Puente also is that, you know, many of our Zumba instructors, our volunteers, when we work with people to get their citizenship through the Department of Immigration, some of them eventually help tutor other people who are working on their citizenship. And I just feel that the more that I could see that happening, the more empowerment that we provide to our own community. And we continue joking at Puente, like, you know, when you do your strategic planning and all that long-term visioning, our long-term is to get us out of our own jobs. If we don't need to be there because our community know how to advocate for themselves, then I think it's not a bad plan. And of course, we'll be there until we're needed. And there's always, we say that there's newcomers, there's people that arrive with not much on their backs. And so, yeah, we will be there for the community as long as we're needed. But I think that these different thoughts about the strengths of our own community members have made the work that we do better as well. And Maya just showed up on the screen. Thank you. And, you know, if I just close in that, I almost feel that I'm a little off today. It's been a hard week, and it's been just almost surreal. And I don't know if you've been in an emergency situation. I'm sure some of you have been. It feels like it's been a month and it's been just a week, but that's how the body feels. That's how the mind feels. And I cannot wait for this to be over. But really, if we continue collaborating in the regular days, we're gonna be ready to continue collaborating in times of crisis. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Rita, and clapping. If we could hear everybody, you know, we have about 50 people on the call. Thank you, the three of you. We're going to start our Q&A session. We have a few questions here. I will start first for the three of you. When it comes to, you know, the three of you, excuse what I say here is you three are badasses. You know, you guys have so much passion. You have a following, and you push on. How much do you think of that, would you say, is like nature nurture? Is part of this, you know, you were born to this and it's part of, you know, you came out of the womb, you were children like this? Or do you think it's experiential that really drives? And if you think of some of your peers who are in the same work, what's your answer to that?
Well, I guess I can share. For me, it was all about my family. My mom and dad really led by example as a very young girl. I grew up in Panama. Well, I was born in Texas. And when I was 2 years old, we moved to Central America. My dad worked in the canal zone as an electrician. So we lived there for 6 years, and I was able to live in Panama. And as a very little girl, age 2 to 7, I really kind of dived into experiences of seeing children that lived in orphanages. We worked closely with the nuns there. And one of the most vivid memories I have even till this day is going to the orphanage and seeing this huge courtyard and all of these children running and playing and also being told that, you know, they didn't have a family, that the nuns cared for them there. And, you know, we became friends with many of the children and we worked with them, and they also came and lived with us for periods of time. And I remember thinking, how is it that they are me and I'm them? How is it that I have, you know, a bed or a family, and because of poverty and choices that their parents didn't want to make, were forced to give them, you know, in these situations. And I lived my young life through that lens of seeing these children. And now, you know, I think it's just been a part of me since then. But now too, with my daughters, I'm seeing the work that I do every day, and I have twins that are 13 and my daughter's 15. And now I'm trying to teach back, and, you know, they are learning in different ways. And when they see, sometimes I don't know if they're grasping it, but just yesterday, my daughter said, "Mom, I want to show you this video." And she said, "I'm trying to share it." And it was a social justice video about a little girl whose dad had been deported. And she was talking about how painful it was to watch that. And in that moment, I took a breath that, yes, they're seeing and they're learning and they're standing up and rising up. So I think for me, it's my very early formative years and the teachings of my family.
Oh, Rita?
I think on my end, I almost feel it's too. I mean, I've seen people for sure that I'm like, how did they do it? They're just like, they have this inner wish to get involved and to be engaged. And then I for sure have seen many other examples in which community members that they could be shy, for example, or disengage. There's some experiences that eventually connect them, and then it's like, put this person in front of a crowd because their message is just so powerful. I also think that when some communities members speak, off script, when they're just like themselves, it's like the best speakers you can have, you know, in the world. So I think it's a combination. Personally, I feel that I tend to listen a lot at the beginning, and so I look shy at the beginning. And eventually I get a little bit more confident, and I understand the issues, and then I can kind of advocate in a more louder way. So I think it's both. I also, you know, I have this idea that we tend to kind of admire more when people is outspoken, and when people are, you know, they can speak in front of groups. And I don't know. I also feel often that we need to let people that are more like on the writing side of things, or that can be more shy, and they definitely speak better in front of our smaller group, or when you put them one-on-one with the representatives. And so I think there's room for a lot of different ways to be a leader.
That's a great point. And Fo, you too. I'm curious also your thought, and we've talked a lot about crisis. Is crisis driving us, or is it as a combination, as Rita says?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a choice many times during crisis. We become reactive. But I think for me culturally, reactive and being responsive are actually two different things. I think response actually captures a level of where your heart is, where your pulse is at that time. And coming from a very reflective mother, you know, it allowed for me to take those moments to help capture any missteps when I want to respond to things or be reactive. I will say, like I've heard from my fellow panelists, is that it's very cultural. It was very connected to my roots and how I have a comprehensive approach of how I walk through life and address issues that I see. I definitely can say that it's because of the example that I have seen through my family and my peers and my community. And I am very conscious of the fact that we are always being watched. When you're identified in the community or circles as someone who leads, people look to you for that level of leadership by the way you model and the way you walk. And so that comes with a huge responsibility, but it also, to me, comes with an opportunity to change the narrative and how we want to respond and react. So I really attribute my mindset, not just from my parents, but from my environment. We don't always talk about environment, but being a native San Franciscan, you know, growing up in the Excelsior, I was able to grow up around kids who did not look like me, go into homes and eat foods that I probably would have never eaten, but has really built my cultural antenna and given me appreciation of that diversity, and also has given me a level of diversity of thought, which isn't always ethnic. You know, a lot of times as a woman of color, people think, oh, when she says diversity, she's speaking about the color of her skin. No, we come into our circles with who we are from the environments too that we come from. And so I always have this 415 city mentality blended with being 650 in San Mateo County. But I definitely can say that I give credit to those around me during my upbringing, and I'm still learning.
Great. Actually, I have a question, and then I'm turning to the audience. Our first question actually is a fellow commissioner with us, Susan. Thank you. And this came up, actually, I moderated a panel for Thrive Alliance where Rose Jacobs Gibson talked about running for office back when she was asked to run in East Palo Alto, about you need to be asked. And so, you know, would you have run if you hadn't been asked to run?
Honestly, I don't know. But as a woman of faith, I really believe that God makes no mistakes. I really believe that. I believe that if that wasn't the moment, that he would definitely guide me to be in a position that I needed to be. So I do feel that that was a defining moment that was faith-led. But I do know that I'm in circles because I need to be in those circles, whether asked or not. And as I mentioned earlier, I don't feel that a position defines your beliefs, nor does it have to confine our leadership in the work that we do. I believe that titles and positions actually strengthens our ability to facilitate the progress that we seek. So for me, I think it was a blessing for someone to ask, but I do know in my heart that at some point I probably would have figured out how to be involved in some way.
Great, thank you. I'll ask another question from the audience from James Federighi. What are your views on offering free financial education counseling to the community? Are any of you working with local credit unions to bring that to light? Rita, Belinda? Rita?
I'll speak about that. We started doing financial literacy education after we launched our youth program in 2009, because we figured out a program in which youth who had few opportunities in the summer could work and earn money. And many of them, the earnings significantly impacted the family, right? After the first summer, we saw how the youth spend the money, and we realized that we hadn't thought about teaching them about, credit score, about savings, and so we started doing that, and we definitely saw the change after we started doing that. And then their parents wanted, financial literacy education, and so we started incorporating it into our adult education program. So in my experience, the sooner the better, right? I lived check by check for a long time. My husband will tease me that her stepdaughter was making more money than me when I was in Mexico, right? Like, we are at a disadvantage. We start in a road that is different than most people. So the sooner that we understand how the game operates, the sooner that our community has tools to make the best options. And then for those who are leaders of other groups, then I realized about 2 years ago that my own team, about 75% of us earn to be in the category of low income or very low income. And then I realized we're doing all this work with community members and with youth, and we haven't done it with our own staff. So if you have the chance, a credit union, San Mateo Credit Union are partners in that area, and they have been really good to, give presentations internally and to the community about, how to position yourself in a way that eventually you'll buy a home, things like that. And this past summer, not this one, COVID is like screw everything up, but last summer, I had a youth who was very negative about taking the literacy classes. She felt that this didn't apply to her. She's 16, like it was a waste of time, and she didn't approve that it was a requirement. Two things about that. One, that she felt strong enough that she could complain about it to the director of my organization. So kudos for that. And I told her, you're so well-spoken. And two, then we had a conversation. All right, so tell me how many Latinos own a home in Pescadero? And we came to 5 in the entire community of Pescadero, right? And we say, and that's why you need to have literacy classes now, because in the future, you're not gonna be homeowner if you don't start understanding how this works. So I am very strong advocate about that with people that are very young and in general with everybody, but the sooner that we start, the better.
That's great, thank you. That gets me into kind of my questions about collaboration and trying to bring people together. And I'm thinking of this kind of concept of interest convergence, where privilege finally has similar pain of those that are not so privileged. And, I'm wondering, is COVID really almost, I hate to say, an opportunity where those who may have been privileged now are seeing job insecurity, seeing healthcare, losing healthcare, safety as a question. Do you see that changing, Belinda, Fo, Rita? Any thoughts?
Well, what I can say is I think that people are definitely aware that so many are suffering right now and going through a lot of loss, economic loss, job loss. And I would say that COVID, has affected all of us in one way or another, and so collectively we are all seeing the difference that this has hit in so many ways. So I think people are definitely in a space of empathy right now to be able to reach out, to share, and to listen. I think, as I said earlier, we're just so full of gratitude because here at Alas, we've been giving out, we started a pop-up food pantry just in an emergency to give out like however many bags of food that we had. And it's grown now to 170 every weekend. And it's a drive-by pop-up food pantry and it keeps going up each week. We're giving out 500 bags of food a week. Our mothers at Alas made 8,000 masks, and a lot of this is done because of the support of community. So I feel that there is this level of engagement from people at all levels to say we care, we're here, and we're definitely present. And I just want to say one other thing. I think it's also uncovered another layer of invisibility of those that were already suffering at another level, because so many before were really struggling with housing, and now we're really seeing the impact that high cost of housing is having on those that can not even make it now without having a job, right? And not having that ability to have savings. And we're seeing, for our team at Alas, we're going out into the field working with our North Coast farm workers, and it's even uncovered another level of privilege that we can't work behind the computer. We have to go out into the field, and our farm workers are doing so much to make a difference, to put food on the table, to give back. And I'm seeing that the community, especially the San Mateo County coast, is saying, hey, we appreciate our farm workers in a new way. And that has really been something that I think has reignited that recognition of like, oh, what would we do without them? Because we really do count on them, and we see that even more again.
Mm-hmm. And Fo, are you seeing that in education, increased empathy? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I do. I love how you expressed the level of awareness, Belinda, because outside of the inequities and the disparities that we have seen that have come out of COVID and be magnified, what it has also done has magnified the wonderful bright spots, and the great works of many individuals that are otherwise not heard of, unnoticed, and never brought to light. And for us in education, it has created this level of vulnerability for us to really recognize that we need to really reevaluate the quality of delivery of education and services that we provide and hope to provide. We are hearing so much frustration, not just from our educators, but from the families. We feel and hear from students who are stressed out as well. But what it has also done for us, it has allowed us to revisit what's not in our schools. And when we look at ethnic studies that has come to the forefront during this time of unrest, I have loved the opportunity that this discussion to even be considered has come to the forefront, because for 5 years, I've sat on the school board, and getting it on the agenda and having it really see any progress has been slow to none. So it's interesting to see that because of these times of turmoil and frustration, that we are identifying the need to serve communities from a reflective and equitable lens, so that our classrooms and our students see themselves in the learning that is happening in the classrooms. That happened because of COVID and the push. I will just be very frank, because it's taken too long to get here.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to go to a comment that Rita made about the collaboration with nonprofits. It's something that's close to my heart as well. I've had some heated arguments with people about, it's like nonprofits don't get it, corporates don't get it, government don't get it. Well, maybe we would get it if we work together, but it's clearly very hard. We have a question, how do we strengthen those partnerships? And, it's not just nonprofit and community groups, but, we have the Googles and the Facebooks of the world who have the deep pockets and are seeing that they have to get involved. the small business has to go, and then, you know, lowly citizens. What are some things that what is the challenges, and what are some ways that have worked?
Let me share something that has worked for us, and maybe for me personally too. And it might not work for everybody, but I think people appreciate when we are genuine about what we think. For example, I think I have had really hard conversations with some members of the county. I have really hard conversations with some donors. There was one time where a donor wanted to give us, you know, check for 10,000, but she thought that that the community that we serve was lazy. And I told my team, I'm gonna let this check go because I'm gonna talk to this donor. And it completely turned around. I mean, the donor understood where we were coming from, and it's a donor that is still supporting the organization through now. But we were, you know, there's this faith that you have to. And I felt, if that's gonna go away, it's gonna go away, something else will come. But I think we just have to have courage to have those tough conversations. And I think when you do, because with the county, I mean, there's people that individually I adore, and then there's systems that I think often don't work. But I know that they'll hear it from me. I'm not going to go around to tell them that something has to change. I have really serious conversations with farm workers, and what they tell me is like, okay, I respect that at least you're gonna say it in my face. And I'm like, because I want the system to change. So it makes me nervous. I mean, it doesn't sound like right now, but you know, I'm checking. I know it's not gonna be well taken, but I try to drag myself to that. And I think people appreciate having those encouraging conversations to then work together. And so I think that's, at least in my opinion, that what has built some of the strongest relationships. We have, you know, posts in our community who do a great job, but their actions, the way they operate, take money from the school district. And they are also supporters of Puente. And so I have to have like, what are we gonna do? Because this is not good. You guys could change your ways. And so it's not like a magic one that you have the conversation and voila, this changed. But it builds the relationship. It builds the relationship to a way that eventually, I know that if I need their support, honestly, I know that I can call them and they will respond. So I think that is maybe like one of the first steps. The other thing is, you know, not everybody, I think it's, or people get confused about immigration and people being here unlawfully. And we did have, you know, some of our stronger funders saying, you know, we support your services, but we don't want you to tell people when ICE is in your community. And I was like, no, we don't always tell people. We will publish it on Facebook. We will send texts. I mean, we'll go beyond what you think we're gonna do. It's not just that we support it, it's that we'll activate that response. And we did lose that donor. But you know, sometimes it is the way it is. And actually I was sharing this story with another group, and then they ended up writing a check. But you know, sometimes you just need to define where your values are, not as an individual, but as an organization. Because I can do a lot of things on my own social media about what I think and I believe, but I also think always about what am I going to post at Puente? What are our beliefs at Puente? So that, you know, I try to separate both. Obviously, people see me as Puente all the time, but I think we just have to be ready to lose some of those battles. And something will come around. Something will come around. And when it comes in terms of collaboration, I think there's many examples in which nonprofits are like, I don't do this, but I know you do this, so I send this donor your way. And I think the more that we can do that, probably will strengthen not just the sector, but our communities too.
Okay, great. I have
Maya, I wanted to answer this one.
Oh, please, yes.
I'm grateful for this question because it speaks to investment. And I think that a lot of times, as I spoke to tokenism, a lot of times I'm the only one representing my community. And as a cultural broker, I think it's really important that when we speak to collaboration, that it not be defined by those that are asking. That when you speak to collaboration, that when you make the ask, that you are investing in our input genuinely, as Rita has alluded to. So when you're asking for my help, you're asking for representation, and I'm speaking from a Pacific Islander perspective, is that my hope is that you will trust me when I say there are so many more than me. If you would just allow me to share the wealth of brilliance that exists in my brown community, you will have so much more wisdom at the table. The problem is we're always defined by the ask that we're given, but never asked to contribute and create that space called collaboration.
Great, thank you. I'm going to ask a final question of all of you kind of to close here. And it's based on something that a term that's been used for the last few months that is probably getting, I get very cynical about. It's being an ally. And I watched as a lot of my colleagues and friends were using, I am an ally, I am an ally. And I think it's overused. And I want to ask all three of you, what is your definition of an ally for you, and how we all can actively be allies?
I think for all of us, well, being here today in community is really powerful. And when I think about what is an ally, I do think about, similar to what they were saying, who's gonna let us speak for the families, speak for the children, speak for the injustice, stand against, what we see is wrong, not be censored, and not have to be apologetic. Because, for me, I will stand up when I see something that I believe needs to be shared, needs to be told, needs to be spoken, but especially for all those, that are not heard, right? Every day it's a mission when we see what families are living with in silence. And then as the director of ALAs of the nonprofit, as a faculty at USF, and as part of the Bay Area border team working with children at the border every day in asylum, I mean, for me, it's critical that I be able to have that platform to speak up personally, for what I believe in as an agency, standing up for, I have this analogy, like there's children that are sitting in the back of the classroom, and we need to move them to the front of the stage, And so an ally is those that want to help us push everyone to an equitable space, that everybody's voice is heard, that they're going to walk alongside and trust, the mission, and also believe in social justice, believe in equity, and believe in empowerment. And also, most importantly, to see the leadership, the cultural wealth that exists in everybody inherently, that regardless of language, regardless of social status, regardless of economic, that everyone is a leader and everyone has a gift when you let them fly, when you let them soar. And so an ally is someone that is investing in all of that, whether it's through encouragement, whether it's through the values that they're imparting, whether it's through funding and sharing, or whether it's just being present to show up and say, I'm here and I care, or whether it's cheering from a distance or just listening. So I think that's what I see as an ally. And I also want to thank all of those that are listening that I know today, that have been there for us, for the program, for me personally, and all of you that I don't know that are out there. Thank you for being here today and being that ally, because we feel the love, definitely. And thank you also, Tanya, for leading the way with all of this, and to the panelists. It's been amazing to be with you.
Thank you, thank you. Rita, what is an ally to you, and any final thoughts?
I mean, I think I agree with Belinda on that description. The only other additional thought that I can provide is that it's not only important the what people do to be allies. I think to me is key the how they do it. And I think that's where sometimes I ask people to check themselves out. because they do want to help, but they want to do it from the way that they think is the right way to do it, right? Or when they think that they have the answer. And I think all those allies that are ready to jump and support, they also need to listen to the community. And you know, sometimes you're going to have communities that say like, actually we're fine about this, or you're going to have community members that want it a different way. And that's the only caution that I usually have about allies. And you know, you will see, particularly during this crisis, how many people want to bring what they think is needed, and regardless of what is actually needed, or you know, you'll see it when we talk about nutrition and people have their own way of understanding nutrition, but if it's foreign food, that's not healthy, like those kind of examples. So I think I just in general ask people to think when they're coming up as allies is to think about the how they are being part of the process and the solutions as well.
Great, thank you. And Fo, closing it out.
Yeah, I agree with what both Belinda and Rita have shared. And I think being mindful as an ally, I've said it before in different circles, looking to your left and looking to your right, who's not there. So you need to be that voice. That's allyship, is like, why isn't this agency here? Why is this representation not at the table when we are considered to be the decision makers? And we need to be more inclusive and intentional, you know, and I loved hearing what Belinda said as well, is that we need to identify people's strengths and take a strength-based approach in seeking that leadership, and not define the strategies that we look to in allies based on what we don't see, but look for what is there. So I see that as being a good ally, but really being that voice for those who don't have an opportunity to recognize that they can really be a difference. So just being open to being that vehicle, that conduit. But I'm very grateful for this opportunity. This is my last year as a commissioner. I've been serving here for 10 years, and I have met some pretty spectacular women. So I do want to thank my fellow panelists, because I see you. I see the wonderful work that you do, and I say thank you. Thank you, Maya and Tanya, and all of our commissioners who made this annual conference happen. You know, despite COVID, it happened, and this week has been amazing. So I wish everyone well. I hope that everyone continues to remain safe through the fires, through COVID, and just thank you for inspiring me. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you, Fo, Rita, Belinda, applause all around. And Tanya, thank you so much for putting this together this whole week. I wish you all, the panelists and our audience, for your attendance here today, and a wonderful weekend, and stay safe and sound. Take care. Thank you.